Amazon is the virtual pipeline. It is the glue that connects every household in the United States. How much money can we make with this thing? And I'm not looking for home runs, I'm looking for base hits. It's like if I can get this product up and going and it can make 8 to 10 sales a day, and I can put $10 in my pocket every time this thing makes a sale, that's $36,000 a year. Put 2 products in place, it's $72,000 a year. You put 3 products in place, you're making 6 figures a year.
Here's the interesting thing with trading is that the difference between creating a consistent income from the markets and that is that over the course of 100 trades, did you make money or not? So if you've got the skill set and the mindset over the course of 100 trades, you're gonna have winners and losers, but you're gonna generate income from that. So it's those mental skills and having the discipline to stick to the plan.
Episode 9 of the 9-part docuseries called Money Revealed. So thrilled to have taken this journey with you. Just know that as much as we included amazing information and wisdom in this 9-part docuseries, I also am aware of what didn't make it into the core 9 episodes. There's some additional information that has great wisdom attached to it that you would want to know about. And we've included that in the bonuses. We couldn't put everything in. You could already see how long these episodes are. So there's additional information that you can own and enjoy and benefit from when you get one of the packages. So take a look at what we have to offer. Look at the bonuses that are in there. And time is running out to get our deep discount during this free viewing period. So now's the time to make your decision to jump in to invest in Money Revealed. Now, let me share with you what we have in episode 9. I'm excited to take you behind the curtain with a discussion I have with one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Jason FLADLIEN. Jason has literally broken records with some of the initiatives that he's launched in the entrepreneurial world. And he's going to tell you how you can set up your own Amazon store and become a millionaire doing so. He's taught many how to do this, and from an entrepreneurial perspective, whether you ever set up an Amazon store or not, you're going to learn something here that's going to help you in your life. Jason, thanks for taking the time to be here. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Jason FLADLIEN, and I am a digital marketer, which really doesn't mean anything. I just figure out how to reach people, online groups, large markets, figure out what they need solved, solve it for them in a way that they get a good deal. If they pay money to have it solved, I get a lot of money. They get happy, I get happy, and we all win at the end of the day. So we typically try to help businesses become better businesses.
Let's go back a little bit. Nobody goes to grade school and says, I'm going to be a digital marketer when I grow up. How did this evolve? How did you end up in this career?
So it's interesting because my dad was a teacher at a high school, and he taught like basic, I think they call it processing back then or something like that. So he was one of the only people that knew how to use a computer in the 80s. And so when I was like 80, it was like 86, I was about 3 years old, and he had a little Apple II computer. Not that we could afford it because we were so broke it wasn't even funny, but because he had a position at the school, we got to loan one of these things out. So I was like 3 years old, and I was running these prompt commands to boot up the hard drive and to let this thing run. This was before there was a mouse, before there was a graphic interface. It was really a fascinating time, but as a 3-year-old, you got to imagine, my brain was soaking it up like a sponge, like a language, like kids learn languages. So I was immersed in technology so far in advance of everybody else, from the day I was born almost. So when the internet got big in '97, when I started learning how to build websites. I was 14 years old, and so the tech was fascinating to me. But there's a lot of good technical people out there, and very few of them make millions of dollars. The psychology was the missing link. So when I understood the technology and then learned the psychology, that's when things took off.
So tell me about that transition. What caused you to learn about psychology?
I like to do music, create music, make music, and the internet, of course, could do that. And even before the internet, just the technology to run a studio digitally, right? And I was rapping when I was 6 years old, 7, 8 years old, performing shows in front of people and things like that. I was always a natural performer. And I started to get really into the music business. And what really got me there was I became a monk when I was like 21 years old. I was a Hare Krishna monk. And I became this monk, and from the internet, by the way, because I was reading this thing online in the Bhagavad Gita, and it hooked me in. I tried it out, I got sucked in there, and that gave me clarity. And I'm like, I'm going to make this music a full-time thing. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go big with it. So I just was a monk and I was a musician. That's all I did. And I pushed real hard on the music to try to get it out there, and failed miserably. So spent all my money, spent all my time, I had nothing to show for it. But what got me into the marketing aspect of the psychology, if you will, was how do I sell my music? How do I get people to consume my music? How do I make a living with the music? How do I fill up my shows? How do I, build a brand? I didn't know it was a brand back then, but those types of things. And I just got so frustrated that I tried to learn everything I could about getting people to want to buy things. And what I learned in music is it's entertainment. It's very hard to guess what is going to be entertaining or not and what people will pay for it. But then the psychology of what about problems? If people are having really some massive problems, and I can use information and education, that seemed to me to be a lot easier and just as lucrative. So I got so fascinated by the psychology of why people decide to buy things. And then when you marry that with the technology, I could go from 0 to 1 million real quick because I could reach a lot of people online, and there was no technical hurdle that would stop me. Nowadays in 2019, they've figured all that stuff out. So now it's like, people can post on Facebook and they don't even know how to spell Facebook anymore. But when I started, you had to write HTML if you ever wanted to put a message on the internet. So it's funny what we take for granted nowadays, but because I could get over the hurdles way back in the day, I was essentially a pioneer in the field of digital marketing.
Tell us about some of your successes and failures starting there. What did you do?
So I tried a lot of things. I tried to market the music, then I tried to sell information around the music. That didn't work. But what happened was, this was about 2007, Google was getting so big, and there was this site called eZine Articles where you would write an article, post it on eZine Articles, and then at the end you could put a little bio, say, hey, come to my website if you want more information. And for whatever reason, Google had a love affair with eZine Articles. You'd write a 400-word article, and you might get 500, 600, 700 people, 1,000, 2,000 people to read it. And all these people online wanted to promote their business with articles, but nobody wants to write articles because it's tedious, it's monotonous, it's food for the search engines. And so they would contract out the article writing. And that's where I hit my first big win, is I started writing articles for other people, other businesses. Under their name, I was a ghostwriter. And I could write pretty fast, and I developed the system. So I was making about $40 an hour writing for other people. And then I thought, man, people probably want to know how I'm writing these articles, because everybody wants to use article marketing back then in their business. It was an easy way. It didn't cost any money up front. It was reliable, and it worked really well. And so I taught people my system for writing articles. And I made $10,000 selling that course in the first 2 weeks I put it out there on a forum, which I don't even think those exist anymore, right? And I thought, I like this idea. Let me find a problem, solve it, document a system on it, turn around, sell the solution cheap. And I could get rich doing that. And that's essentially where I spent the next 3 years. And that's where I'd pick one single thing to learn, master, and then create a system. And that's how I'd sell it. It was a really simple model, because if I could just find out a faster way to do something, people would pay for that speed. So I could take somebody's article writing time down and cut it in half, basically, the first time I trained them in a little ebook. And they were really happy for that. So they'd pay $5, $10, no problem. And I thought, what else can I do that with? And so I spent 3 years just mastering little skills like that, and then documenting them and turning around and selling them.
During that 3-year period, what else did you do?
So the biggest thing that I did that really catapulted me to the next level was membership sites. So everybody wanted to create this thing where you pay them, and then it's like Netflix nowadays we take for granted. It's like I pay you every single month, or like Amazon Prime is a membership, and there are other memberships like that. Back then, it was very hard to create a membership site on the internet, but people like the concept of, if I can just sell them once and then they pay until they die or cancel, that seems like a better model. So everybody was hot on membership sites, but the technology, again, was super complicated, super expensive, and it still didn't work. So you paid a lot of money and you got frustrated and you couldn't solve it. So I scoured for a solution of how could somebody get it up and running in less than a half an hour. And I found out a way to do it in like less than 6 minutes, to set up the full infrastructure of how to run a membership site and put it in place. So no matter what you were selling, teaching, servicing, you now had a fully functional membership site for free. And so I sold a little book for $17 on how to do that. And it was the hottest thing at the time because everybody wanted to know how to do that. And I was the only one that had that answer. And that really turned me on. Oh man, there's power in just finding a simple solution. And then you start stacking these, because now I know this about membership sites, and I know this about article writing, and I know this about how to create ebooks, and I know this about, like when Facebook first came on the scene, and they opened it up for business pages. We learned some of the first strategies for business pages and then documented them and taught them, because I had another employee. I hired my first employee and then created a company in 2011 with a business partner of mine, and then we just started developing software, because if we could do this for information, what could we do with software? And we just kept trading all the way up until we really stumbled upon Amazon in 2013, and we taught people how to sell on Amazon, physical products. And then it was over, dude. It was just, it was a whole different experience.
First of all, I want to acknowledge that you're steeped in the philosophy of finding a problem and then coming up with a solution. This brings us to the Amazon story. This is what I think people watching today will really benefit from. If someone's looking to start a business, this is a really reasonable way that someone can do it. Tell us about your experience with Amazon.
Yeah, so hilariously enough, I had experience with Amazon before they had this program called Fulfillment by Amazon. So Fulfillment by Amazon is, Amazon says, hey, we have the pipeline, we have the trucks, we have the logistics, we know how to send packages to people in 2 days or less, or in sometimes 2 hours or less. But we don't have the products. Just like if you go to Walmart, Walmart doesn't make all those products. In fact, they make less than 1% of them. They use third-party products, third-party seller products, and they fill up the stores, and then they are the ones that put people in the stores. Well, the digital store, the everything store, as Amazon likes to be called, they said, give me your products. I don't care who you are. I don't care how big or small your business is. If you have a product, we want to put it in our store. And we have limitless shelf space because we're virtual. So send it in, and then we'll take care of the customer, the shipping, the handling. And if they're Prime members, they can buy your products with one click. They can buy my products with one click. They can buy any product with one click. So, I mean, if you're going to try to sell something online and you don't have one-click purchasing with 2-day free delivery, which 70% of Americans have, which is Prime, God, you're playing a game where you're going to a gunfight with a wet spaghetti noodle. It's a very hard way to make the world work. So let's swim downstream, not upstream. But I was part of Amazon way back in the day before Fulfillment by Amazon, because I sent my music into them. And it was so challenging and so cumbersome, but I was aware of this marketplace phenomenon. And then when 2013 came, what was interesting is we were trying to help a lot of people get started online, trying to help people start their own online businesses, but it was always a fight. Because they'd be like, I don't understand Google, Jason. I don't understand how Facebook works. I don't understand digital marketing. I don't understand ebooks and selling information and all that kind of stuff. But I understand products that I can drop on my toe. I get that, right? I understand selling a USB charger, or I understand selling a pot holder or a thermostat, or you name it, And these are mass market household good type of products. They're commodity products, and everybody's been taught it's bad to sell commodity, differentiate or die and all that junk, right? But the reality is if I can sell my sunscreen and put it in front of you, you'll probably buy it simply because it's in front of you. So if you go to the store and you see like 6 different brands of peanut butter, you're just gonna pick one of those 6. And that's how you win the game. So if I can get in front of everybody and be one of those 6 peanut butters, then I'll win the game without being a big, gigantic brand name. I'll win the game without having to, master supply chain management and all this crazy stuff. But here's the game on Amazon, and this is something a lot of people don't realize, is Amazon is a search engine. So Amazon uses an algorithm to determine if I put in a search for like Bluetooth speaker, who shows up in the results of that when you do a search for that? Who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4? there's a computational program that determines each and every one of those listings, each and every one of those positions for each and every one of those search results. So that's the only mystery to Amazon, which is great because people are like, oh, I get physical products. I understand that I can call somebody up, they'll slap my label on a product, and now I have my own brand, because a majority of products are not manufactured by the person who sells them. They're manufactured in a separate factory, and then they're labeled for the brand. Like Costco has the brand Kirkland. That's a private label. We can do the same thing. Any one of us can do the same thing because we live on the internet these days. Without even talking to somebody, I could have an order ready in place with my own brand on it and sent from that manufacturer to Amazon, from Amazon to the client or the customer. And we've sold millions of dollars of product that we've never even touched, seen, smelt, or felt, right? But we do this because we understand the algorithm. Is people are just, they don't go past page 1 on an Amazon search. So if you get on page 1 on Amazon, you win the game. And because of all the experience I had, like when Kindle first came out, we had some of the first titles ever listed on Kindle. So I had experience with that back then. And even before then, with all these different search engines, with using articles back in the day, writing those articles and understanding them being in the search engine. The only difference is it takes about 15 PhDs to figure out how Google works and how they rank. And they have a lot of factors that slow you down. Even if you are the most relevant information, you might not win because some guy 18 years ago wrote about it first. So he has all the history, he has all the data, and you're just the new kid on the block. Amazon, because their data is, did that person buy or not? It's much cleaner, it's much simpler, and it's easier to affect. And the cool thing is most product searches don't start on Google. They start on Amazon. And Amazon controls 50% of the e-commerce market online, so call it a monopoly, by the way. So if you can understand how to put yourself on page 1, you get in front of the most amount of buyers who trust Amazon as a brand, which is the #1 trusted brand by millennials in the world, who can one-click purchase if they're a Prime member, which 70% of people are. And if I'm going to try to make money online, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stack the deck in my favor as opposed to just trying to perform miracles. And I think that's the #1 thing. You know, if my son or daughter came to me and says, what should I do to start an online business? I'm going to tell them, private label a product, a physical product on Amazon and sell it.
So let's say I'm in Lubbock, Texas, and I want to improve my life by making more money. I've got an entrepreneurial itch and I want to start my own business and I want to do something on Amazon, but all this is way over my head and I got a bunch of questions. Where do I find products? How do I choose products? How do I know what will sell? How does someone even begin to educate themselves about this type of business?
So we've trained over 15,000 Amazon sellers. It's crazy to think, small town Iowa boy that I am, that I've influenced the biggest e-commerce giant on the planet. But we've been so effective with our clients that we've literally changed policy on Amazon.com. Because when you go to sell a product, this is what I always told my customers, is they want to go with something that they know. So, you know, if they run a daycare, they know kids, toddlers, let's sell toddler stuff. And that's a mistake. And other people will say, well, I'm a musician. Like the lead singer of Chicago, we helped him start an Amazon business. And he picked music because he's the lead singer of Chicago, right? And that might make sense for him. But the reality is, and this might sound hardcore, ruthless, but I think it's just the best way to make the money, is we do it purely based on math. It's what's a product that people are looking at on Amazon right now that they are not getting the choice that they want? What's a product that people are looking at right now that we feel we can get a version of it in front of them easier than any other product? And, you know, I've sold beauty products. Now, look at me, I'm not using a lot of beauty products, right? I've sold kitchen appliances of every shape and sort, and I don't even know my way around my own kitchen. But why did I sell them? I sold them because I said, wow, these are only the options on page 1 for people on Amazon right now. There's all these people buying these products on Amazon, and there's few people selling these products on Amazon. And I think I can put a product on page 1 because I see a product on page 1 right now that sucks. And so it's all based around supply and demand. It's all based around opportunity. Can I put it on there? And then the last thing I look at it is, how much money can we make with this thing? And I'm not looking for home runs, I'm looking for base hits. It's like, if I can get this product up and going and it can make 8 to 10 sales a day, and I can put $10 in my pocket every time this thing makes a sale, that's $100 a day. That's $36,000 a year. That's almost at the average household income or the average individual income in the United States right now. You put 2 products in place, it's $72,000 a year. You put 3 products in place, you're making 6 figures a year. And to me, that's the kind of business I like to be in, because it's just a simple process that just runs day in and day out. And you say, well, how do you know how products sell? Well, here's the beautiful thing about Amazon. They literally will rank every single product in every single category and update it by the hour with what's called a bestseller rank. So I don't have to guess. I can extrapolate and see, oh, all these different people for whatever reason are buying this particular type of product. Can we source that product? Yeah. Okay. Can we get it on Amazon? Sure. And look at who our competition is. That's called opportunity. So I fall in love with products all the time based on their potential to make me money. But I don't have to know anything about those products day one. I just have to realize that this is an opportunity to give Amazon what it wants, which is a better customer experience, to give the customer what they want, which is a better choice. And then I get everything I want as a result of that.
This is absolutely fascinating. You're not imposing what your interests are on the market. You're finding out what the soft spots in the market are, and you're doing this all through research.
Yeah. Most of it is purely through research and then understanding some of the factors of what Amazon has. And so this is what I find so interesting, is experience becomes a detriment on Amazon. So somebody says, I'm brand new, Jason, what do I know about business? And I say, awesome, congratulations, because everybody else takes an old way of doing business, which is an offline approach, and they try to force it online and they lose. And people that are brand new, they don't have those biases. And so if we're used to shopping where we can pick up products and look at them and do a full 360 check and ask the clerk if a question or a clarification about it, then yeah, I don't have an advantage there because I've never sold a product like that in my life. But I've sold millions and millions of dollars worth of products online. How do you sell a product? What would you do differently if you knew the customer couldn't pick it up? If they couldn't turn it around, if they couldn't touch it, if they couldn't ask somebody for clarification? Well, it's a great question to ask. And so what we realize is the packaging and the designs and the labels, you would design them offline to stand out on a shelf. Well, that will absolutely not make you stand out online. There's all kinds of things that we would do. So I'll give you an example. If I know that my #1 search phrase is going to be a certain specific word, we're going to make the label have those words on them. So when somebody searches that and scans the list of products, they see the word phrase that they just put in to the search bar. And what happens? They click through our product before they click through anybody else's. And that's just one example of, we literally make from the ground up our whole approach to be, we're selling on Amazon and only on Amazon, and we're going to look through the eyes of a customer going to Amazon. So all these big brands who are trying to port their products in and force them to work on Amazon, they are at such a disadvantage to somebody just starting out who's making products for specifically the purpose of serving Amazon. And that's how you win.
Absolutely brilliant. Tell me some of the experiences of the over 15,000 people you trained. Surely some of them have gone on to do great things based on what you taught them.
Yeah, we have single-handedly tracked over 100 people who've built a 7-figure Amazon business from scratch, meaning they came in with $0 and now they have $1 million plus business. Some of them have 8-figure businesses, $10 million or more. Some of them I know that we've trained from the start have sold their business for more than $10 million. And those are nice, and I like those, and those are cool. But more important to me is we have a lot of people, really for most people, just an extra $20,000 a year is a complete difference in lifestyle. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who don't have insurance right now. Over 50% of Americans, I think, don't have insurance. If you make an extra $20,000 a year, you can sleep well at night knowing that you're not one emergency away from bankruptcy, right? And that's nice. Or there's a lot of people who know they need a vacation and want a vacation, but they can't afford to take a vacation. And that sucks. And now they can. That extra $20,000 will change their whole life. That extra $20,000 for most people living today is the difference between being stressed out and being at ease. And so those are the types of people I really enjoy, because the Amazon business, once it gets started and gets going, it tends to stay going on its own. Whereas all these other digital businesses, the moment you stop working it, is the moment it stops working for you. But Amazon has that tipping point. If I can put a product in front of a bunch of people and it's a decent product, it will stay there. And so, just work backwards. 20,000. Let's say you make $10 every time you sell a product, which is a pretty standard estimation, right? You got to sell 2,000 products a year. 2,000 products a year, 365, because your products don't take Saturdays and Sundays off. They continue to work for you. And they work double time on the holidays, because that's the best time to be on Amazon. So it's like, what do you sell in a day? I don't even know the math on that, but it's like 6, 7, 8 products a day. That's nothing. Considering Amazon, 25% of all money spent online flows through Amazon. So you tell me, 8 products a day is like a teaspoon in the ocean. It's so doable and it's so repeatable. So if you're starting off and you're so scared, pick a product that is super duper obscure that nobody would even think about trying to sell. And you could probably sell 6, 7, or 8 of those a day. And there you go. Now, did you make $1 million? No. You're not going to retire anytime soon. But now you're sleeping well at night. Now you feel comfortable about yourself. You're taking care of the financial strain in your life, and you can focus on other areas of your life. And to me, we have seen a whole bunch of people do that. And that I feel comfortable about, that I feel is reliable, and that I feel so good at helping people accomplish that. Because it really makes me feel good about my mark that I'm putting on this world.
What does the time commitment look like for someone who's looking to fall in that range of making an extra $20,000 to $36,000 per year in an Amazon business?
So I love the time question, because the real answer to that is whatever time that you can make available is enough. You just might get there a little later or a little sooner, but it's a journey, it's not a race. And less important is the amount of hours per week, and more important is the consistency. So if you say, Jason, what should I spend a week? I say, what can you absolutely guarantee me week in and week out that no matter what, you'll spend at least this amount of time? And if you say, Jason, 5 hours, done. We can make it work in 5 hours. If you say, Jason, I can do 40 hours a week, I'd probably say, no, that's too much. Because that extra 20 or 30 hours is not going to really help get you there any sooner. And so I would recommend most people take a consistent 10 hours to 15 hours a week. If you do too much more than that, you'll tend to burn out, and then you lose before you even start the game. If you do less than that, you can still get there. We've had people spend 1 hour a week, and if that's your only option, that's your only option, and it will still work if you do 1 hour a week. It's the only business I've ever seen, by the way, that does that, where you can just go slow and steady and win the race. But that sweet spot of 5 to 15 hours a week, it's the consistency that wins the game. Everybody is fast out of the gate, but who's consistent, that wins the game. And I will tell you, if you want it, 10 hours a week is there for you. If you don't want it, 1,000,000 hours a week ain't gonna get it for you.
Everyone knows that an entrepreneurial or business venture comes with risk. What kind of risk accompanies this type of business?
I love thinking about the risk, because I'm a risk-first type of guy. What's the downside? Show me the downside before you show me the upside. And there's risks. There's risk involved in everything, and there's risks involved with this one, with Amazon as well. If I source a product, I'm going to have to pay for the inventory up front. And that's going to be, you can do that for as little as $150 if you want to. I don't recommend being cheap, though, just for the sake of being cheap. But if that's all you have, that's all you have. I don't recommend you spend more than $2,500 when you source your first batch of inventory, because to me, that's too reckless. But let's just say you pick the worst possible product and you spend $1,500 up front to put it on there, right? I think like your Seller Central account that you use to log into Amazon and manage your account, I think that's like $40 a month. So you have that at risk, right? And then you have your time. So yeah, there's some risk involved. And yeah, you got to pay some money up front. Unlike these things that say, hey, get started for free. I found free means free in money, which means not free in time. But this is less in time and more with an initial commitment. So here's what typically happens. This is the risk. The risk is you will sell that inventory out, because Amazon is so massive and so big, and it's based on keyword searches, that somebody will put in a random enough string of keywords that your product will show up. So you will eventually sell all your product. So you will make money, but it might take you 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get there if you messed everything up. And that's what I tell clients. I say, isn't that amazing? It's going to be very hard for you to lose unless you want to treat this as a lottery ticket. Then you'll lose probably, because you'll be disappointed. Why didn't I make $1 million the moment I listed my product on Amazon? Well, I hate to tell you, it doesn't work that way, you know? But very often the risk involved is you're going to spend some time and money up front. You're going to have to wait a month or two to see a return on that, maybe 3 months. But then when you turn that corner, It's beautiful. The biggest risk, and sounds crazy, is because the business becomes so hands-off, sometimes my clients kind of fall asleep at the wheel. And then after making, 80, 90, 100, 120,000 year one or year two, they just let their listing go to crap. They don't make sure that their reviews are coming in consistently, and that if there's a bad review that they take care of that customer, or they don't check their listing every once in a while to make sure it stays on page one. And so the biggest risk is complacency. And I don't know how to solve that one, but other than to warn against it. But yeah, the beautiful thing about this is there's very little risk involved, and I'm much more into businesses these days that are very little risk. But unlike Uber, which everybody wants to drive Uber now, Uber is barely above minimum wage for most people. Yeah, there's no risk involved whatsoever in that. Well, maybe there's some risk involved. You could get hit by the car or whatever, but you got to take some risk. But this has so little risk involved and so high of a potential. To me, it just makes sense.
What's fascinating to me is that I always look for projects that don't just grow under my energy, but it also grows under someone else's energy. So when we do a film, we make films that other people want to hear about. What I'm getting from what you're saying is that you're harnessing the power of Amazon and the billions of dollars that they're spending on developing a search engine. And it's available to anybody that wants to set up a store. It's astounding.
If you go through the history of industry, and you see there's always a period in history where a rush of millionaires are made. Like the gold rush is an example of that. And when they started laying the railroad, there's an example of that. In the steel industry, there's an example of that. And the automobile industry, there's examples of that. We have these periods in history where there's a whole bunch of millionaires made, and then we have these gaps where there are not that many millionaires made. And every single time you see this windfall of millionaires that just seem to fall out of the sky, it's because somebody has made a pipeline. And Amazon is the virtual pipeline. It is the glue that connects every household in the United States to a purchase that can be made on the phone with a high reliability that they know that I'm not buying from some stranger who's going to steal my money, rip me off, and then sell my information on the black market. They are buying from a reliable source, just like their dry cleaner when they drop it off and they ask how the Little League game was with their kids, right? That's what Amazon is. It's a pipeline. It is just freshly laid. It's the railroad just freshly laid. It's the steel industry just getting up and going. And you have the opportunity to sit at the table with the founders, and you're going to get in on those contracts, and you're going to get in on the land that's not claimed right now. And that's the beauty of what Amazon is. Amazon has presented this thing, but Amazon spent 22 years before it actually turned a profit. Something ridiculous like that. I think it was 19 to 22 years, something insane. And they invested hundreds of billions of dollars to make that happen. Now it's only finally paying off for them. And that's beautiful because nobody else could do that. But when Amazon did that because Amazon knew everybody's going to want to come to us. Everybody will eventually have to come to us. But we're in that period of time right now where we get to choose to go to them. We're not forcing. So if we're there first, we're going to win. We're going to take advantage of that. And Amazon absolutely wants that. Amazon wants the following. They want you to wake up one day and say, I want the most obscure thing in the world, and I want it with pink polka dots. And then you plug it in, and Amazon just so happens to have that product. But they need me, to supply those products. They've taken care of the hard part, which is the pipeline, and we just need to put the products in. Now, if you wait 3, 5, 6 years, it's going to be back to business as usual. Just like if you waited 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years to get in on the gold rush, you were picking through crumbs. So there's urgency involved here. And the quicker you get in, the better it is. And it's not because you're smarter than the next guy. It's just because opportunity knocked, and you actually decided to open the door. And that's what I feel what Amazon represents. And it's not always going to be that way, but it is that way right now.
That's a really good point. This is a unique opportunity in the market. What's the lifespan going to be before this evaporates or evolves into a completely different form?
Yeah, you can always tell the lifespan of something when you know it's no longer the golden age to get in. It's when somebody who has no business doing it starts doing it. So, when your uncle decided to start flipping houses and he's never did anything in real estate in his life, that was when you knew the bubble was going to pop, right? When, your brother-in-law started buying tech stocks in 2000, that's when you knew the bubble was going to pop. That was the dot-com pop, right? So at each point in history, when people who have no business start talking about fulfillment by Amazon, that's when you know it's coming down the pipeline. And it isn't there yet. I think it's going to be another 3 to 5 years. But I said that 3 to 5 years ago, and it's still wide open. You know, my biggest regret in my life is that I can't get enough people to do this. Because if they actually listened to me, we would be there right now. But people are reluctant to change, and that's the greatest downfall of humanity, is we would rather be miserable but comfortable in our misery than to take a chance and be happy.
Have you written a book on this? I mean, how does someone learn how to do this?
Yeah, we create, and we've been around all the major courses that have taught this, and we've been a proponent and cheerleader of those, and then we decided to finally do it on our own. Because I never wanted to be an educator. I just wanted to help people do it. So we're kind of forced in this role. So if you look up a course called Search, Find, Buy, that's our thing. And that's what I would recommend you go through. And the reason we call it Search, Find, Buy is because that's how people shop on Amazon. They search for something. Once they find it, they buy it. So Search, Find, Buy is our definitive guide. And we pretty much we've laid the groundwork for what's effective on Amazon. And then 3 or 4 years later, the rest of people finally catch up. But we typically are the trendsetters because I obsess over Amazon as a search engine, as an algorithm. I read the patents on it. I read every piece of information possible, and then I field test over 15,000 sellers my wacky theories. And occasionally we find one that works really well, and then we use that. But it's kind of like this. If you sat down in front of a safe that had 5 combinations, of 0 through 10, right? That is literally 100,000 different possibilities of what it could be to crack that safe. If you started going 00001, 0002, et cetera, right? One person doing that could take years or decades. But imagine you had 1,000 people and you divided them up and you each gave them a section of numbers and you had them work together. We will crack that safe. We will open that safe. And that's essentially how we treat Amazon. It's just a number. We're twisting numbers and dialing it in and trying to open the safe, and every so often we figure it out. But what we're doing is we're smart enough to realize once we do figure it out, we document it, we work backwards, we validate it, and then it becomes a process. And so yeah, I can be wrong 999 times, but if I'm right the 1,000th time, it pays for all. And that's what we do at Search, Find, Buy.
So you actually have a group of people who are leaning on one another rather than working on their own?
Yeah, and this is something to be said about how enterprise works and how wealth truly is made and how money truly is made. I never expected that, but what happened is over the years, I built all these different information products and sold them and trained them, and people trusted me, and they got a good experience. And so when I told them, hey, I'm going to show you something that's a 180, it's not like anything we've ever taught you before, it's a physical product stuff, not digital products, they trusted me enough. And then when they bought the first iteration of this, I said, now I know this is going to be weird, but this seems to be the way it works on Amazon. And they trusted me enough to try it. And it was that trust that was the difference, because otherwise I don't think we could have ever kind of assembled and crowdsourced this information without me spending 7 years first winning the trust of this core customer base by servicing them in advance. And that's really how money is made. But yeah, we assembled a collective group of people, and then we try to solve every problem. It goes back to that find a problem and solve it mentality. People have trouble sourcing products in China. So what do? We actually hired people in China, brought them into our company, and all they do for us is source products for our clients. And then instead of charging them, we just put it in as a bonus with our course. And every so often we continue to do that. We try to find what's the biggest limitation that's stopping somebody from being successful sooner rather than later. And let's engineer a solution. Then how do we make that either free or part of the product or something that will output more than what you have to input into it to make it work?
It's interesting from your position that you've trained 15,000 people to do this. And I know in 15,000 there's 20% of that, about 3,000 people who are going to end up doing about what the other 80% are doing. I know you spend a lot of time with concern over those 80% of people who can't seem to move. And you've researched what their mindset is. How do you address that, and how do you create the right mindset that might even allow success?
Yeah, so I heard it said best, it's 50% what you know, and it's 50% how you feel about what you know. And if you have the best plan, which I think what we have is the best plan, but you have the wrong type of mindset, you're going to lose no matter what. So the typical mindsets that I see that prevent people from being rich is one is they associate that with greed or guilt, or if I make money, that means I'm taking away something from somebody else, like it's a zero-sum game or something. And that's sad to me because it's actually the opposite. The way that you can do it is you can make somebody better and you can get rich. And in fact, oftentimes, that's how it really works. Very rarely do you get rich by taking advantage of other people. That's the hardest way to get wealthy. I don't recommend it. It's so much easier because somebody will say, I'll give you an example, is if somebody can't sleep at night, sleep to them, which is an intangible thing, what would they exchange monetarily for that, to get that sleep at night and still feel like they got the best deal ever? And think about it like this. If you had a piece of information that they paid $20 for, and all of a sudden they could sleep again at night, who got the better deal there? The sleeper did. But think about that. You're like, $20 if I solve that person's problem? What if I solved that for 1 million people? I just made $20 million. Who got the better end of the deal? 1 million other people. Who made 20 million? I did. And that's how we just try to approach wealth. And then it becomes really easy to make money and to get excited about making money. When I realize Amazon wants my products, they need my products to help achieve their goal. Clients want more options, so we should give them that. And then we get rewarded because we put ourselves last in this process. I don't see a better way of living life. But it's also set up that that's also the most surefire way to get wealthy. You know what's hard to get wealthy? Buying a lottery ticket. But why? Because you're trying to get something for nothing. I'm not for that. But a lot of people want the outcome. And so the idea is, how can we make it so that way whatever we do adds good to the world, and can we still get rich in this? And trust me, I'm not a kumbaya type of person. I'm not a hippie, right? I am a very much hardcore, shrewd capitalist. I've just found, pragmatically speaking, the best way I can get rich is by helping other people in a way with whatever I help them. They think they're ripping me off by exchanging money, which is a tangible good, for something that's intangible. But if you feel like you're doing something wrong by trying to make money, I guarantee you'll sabotage yourself in one way, shape, or form. So any success you get will be temporarily. So I recommend that if you are having money issues, don't try to hide them or don't try to pretend they don't exist. Sit down really deeply and say, what is it about money that I feel bad about, or what does money represent to me? And really go to work on that. Because if you put the right mindset with the right plan, that's why people make $1 million in a year. And that's why I've seen it firsthand. So we can't sell the mindset stuff because nobody wants to hear it, but that's really the focus of what should be part of it. So we try to wrap that in everything that we do, is that it's hard to see anything that good that comes out of poverty. I mean, go to the projects and you tell me what solutions are coming out of there, and you tell me, do you want to live like that? I don't. It's like you get wealth, and wealth is money, and wealth is health. Wealth is all these other things, the wealth of relationships, right? Wealth to me is a symbolism of everything good, and poverty to me is a symbolism of suffering. And so I don't see anything noble about suffering, and I don't see anything bad about having a positive effect on the world, provided, of course, you accept that part of the responsibility when it comes to money.
In America, we love the underdog and we love to build them up, but then after they're really successful, we like to beat them back down. And I've been watching this happen with Amazon. They've been so successful, but now they're taking a lot of heat. And secondarily, a lot of these inexpensive products are made in China. And people are starting to question what effect this has on the world. What do you think about these two controversial issues?
So Amazon is not without its problems. And you hear poor worker conditions, people in the factories that are picking and packing, they're exhausted, they're falling over, they're fainting. And there is serious problems that Amazon represents. Anytime you get really big, there's problems that come along with it. It's never to be avoided. The United States wouldn't be as great as it is if it didn't have 8-year-old kids working 12 hours a day during the Industrial Revolution. Unfortunately, I really wish that everything was perfect and that it was all good and there was no downside, but that's just not how the world works. And unfortunately, if you have to always have everything pure to move forward and do anything in life and business, you're never going to succeed. So the real question is are we perpetuating the bad, or are we accelerating the good when it comes to Amazon? And that's a tough decision to consider on how you're going to operate. Because the reality is, I believe that if we go inside of Amazon and try to up the game and up the standard, Amazon, whether they want to or not, is going to have to follow us. If we decide that these are the types of products that we're going to sell, we can put a bad product on page one just as easily as we can put a good product on page one. But why would we put a bad product on page one? That seems like it would be harder. But if we put a good product on page one, how are we going to make that good product happen? We're not going to go to a sweatshop in China, and we're not going to have them assemble it for nickels and dimes and then try to get people to buy a bad product and trick them. That would be foolish. And so we actually can fix a lot of Amazon's problems by being the change that we want to see in the world. Now, I get that some people sometimes, their knee-jerk reaction is to judge and just be like, well, I don't want to be involved with this because of something. But that's so reactive. So my question is, if you have these feelings, if it seems so emotionally charged to you that this is a scary thing and I shouldn't be involved with it, then I would ask, what are you involved with? And in 5 or 10 minutes, I could probably uncover 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 dark secrets about that. I mean, the world is a very complex, nuanced place at the end of the day. And the litmus test for me is, if I was Amazon, would I run my factories that way? No, right? If I was sourcing from China, would I be okay sourcing from places that I don't feel meet my ethical code and standard? No, right? But I can choose how I do my business. And I can decide that if I'm going to utilize the backbone, which I have to, or the highways that we drive upon, or the pipelines that we run through, I can influence change better by being the change than I can about complaining about it or getting upset about it. So the challenge is, as Amazon gets bigger, just like as everything gets bigger, there are more problems that come along with it. But another word for problem is opportunity. And I would love to see people influence positively with this opportunity the changes that they wish to see as well. And unfortunately, life is hard and things are tough and it's complex and it's getting more complex every day. But if we let it get a hold of us and control us and react emotionally, that's not the solution. And instead, let's just figure out what makes sense for ourselves, our families. Start there, and then if we get that solved, what makes sense for the community around us? We get that solved, what makes sense regionally, nationally, and then globally. And I think that we can do that. And I think this is one of the first times in history we have the ability to do that. Because if I wanted to reach 10 million people in the past, how much would that cost me? A lot. Nowadays, you can post an egg on Instagram and reach 300 million people. But let's not post eggs. Let's be the change we want to see. So yeah, that's just something to consider whether you do this or anything else in your life, is if you don't like how it is, you have the ability to change it and get rich doing it.
That's terrific, and I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. I hope you inspired the people who are watching this to seek you out or seek someone else out that can help them. The opportunity with Amazon is absolutely astounding after hearing you describe it. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's so much content here. This is one that you may want to consider watching over and over again. Everybody knows what a juggernaut Amazon is, and now you can harness the power of Amazon and put it to work to create your own wealth. John Carter has presented something to me that I never really understood that well before, this concept of what he called swing trading. There was a time in my life when I used to day trade, and people understand different levels of trading or different time frames for trading, etc. He literally has written the book on and mastered this concept of swing trading, and he feels it's something that you can learn about too and that you can succeed in growing your money with. So watch my interview with John Carter. You're going to find it very interesting. John, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Awesome to be here.
So tell us your career path. What was the timeline to get you to where you are?
So the condensed version, the shortest version is that, so I was a senior in high school and my father was a stockbroker. And I came home one day after working an entire summer at a cookie store where I made $4.25 for each hour that I worked. And so I'd saved up about $1,000. And when I came home, he and his friends were at the table talking about some investments, like they were going to buy some options on Intel. I had no idea what they were talking about. So I went in on this. I said, look, I have $1,000. I want in on this. And so, we did it. One of the guys took my money, put it in his account, bought the options. And then 2 weeks later, they came back and said, here's your $1,000 back plus another $800. I was just like, So, a bunch of alarm clocks and bells went off in my brain. It's like, okay, I worked, at a crap job all summer and managed to save $1,000. And now in 2 weeks, by doing pretty much nothing but having an idea, and I made almost the same amount of money. And so I got hooked on investing and trading. So from there, went to college. I traded through college. I actually traded this girl that I met her financial aid money. Luckily, that worked out well. We're married today with 3 children.
Oh, that really worked out.
That did work out, yeah. And then from there, I worked as a financial analyst for about 4 or 5 years. But during that entire time, I really liked the idea and the freedom of could I just work in the stock markets and create a living from that. But I didn't want to be a stockbroker. I didn't want to run a fund. I also wanted the freedom associated. And so from there, I actually ended up quitting my job and then trading full time. And when I say trading, what I learned is that when I was working full time, you can't sit there and day trade.
Right.
And day trading is actually the worst thing you could ever do because psychologically you can't handle it.
Right.
Most people can't handle it. But really it's the commissions. They eat up and destroy everything.
Right.
So swing trading, where you do a trade you do a trade and then 3 or 4 weeks later you take it off, is great. There's not a lot of, you're not generating a lot of commissions. You're catching the bigger moves.
Where's that term come from, swing trading?
It's so the main things are like scalping, day trading, swing trading, position trading, and investing are kind of the 5 kind of things. And the swing trading is just the idea is like you're just kind of catching the swings in the market. They kind of ebb and flow, and you're just trying to catch those waves.
What's scalping?
Scalping is, so you're taking like 4 espresso shots and you're sitting there trying to catch, like 50 cents in a stock. Like Google, Google at 1,000 and sell it for $1,000.50.
Right.
That's a lot of work
Right.
for not a lot of reward, and it's mentally exhausting.
It sounds like it. I remember when I was running my companies, and I way back when, and day trading was just kind of like a new thing. And I can remember, there's an adrenaline rush to it and excitement.
For sure.
But then I found myself, focusing on my trades and not focusing on my company. So I said, whatever money I'm making over here, I'm more than losing over here. So that didn't work out so much for me. But the swing trading sounds like an interesting approach.
It is, and it's a nice makeup of catching big moves. It's kind of like the juice is worth the squeeze.
Right.
You do the research, you find the setup, and then you're able to do it while you're doing other things. And during that time, I also formed a company called Simpler Trading. And we've been an Inc. 500 company, and what we do is kind of, and I actually really like the business part of it too, but it's just showing people strategies.
Right.
In terms of doing that.
So a part of your business activities is training other people, not just doing it yourself.
Sure. And at some point, what was happening is I was sitting there and I was trading, and I kind of missed the camaraderie of work.
Right.
So ended up just kind of learning and starting a company on my own, and then just kind of growing it to where it is today. But the main thing with that is just really, it was an idea of, growing a business is kind of a trade as well.
Right.
You're starting off and then you're kind of adding value to it. But what I love about it is that you have to provide value, to people, or it's not going to work.
Right.
But what I also found is that by teaching the strategies, it has actually put us on a path of being able to kind of find better ways to do it. Right. So when you actually have to explain something, you're forced to really know what you're talking about.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that something?
So there's, my life, started my professional career as a chiropractor and ended up in several entrepreneurial enterprises over time. And I know with a lot of my colleagues or dentists or other types of professionals, CPAs, medical doctors, et cetera, I know that they have after 10, 20, 30 years of practice, a couple of things come up. Number one, they might be getting bored. Number two, they've accumulated some real wealth, but the idea of saying, well, if I wanted to retire, eating into that principle over time is, could be scary. How long am I going to live? What do I leave my kids? So is there a strategy for that type of let's call them a professional or somebody who's worked in a career and did fairly well for some period of time, that they can take what you do and apply it to their lives?
So there's a couple of things that I've watched with this, and I've seen a lot of clients go through a lot of different things, and whether it's a dentist or a doctor or an entrepreneur, and maybe they have a business and they've saved up a lot of money, or they've sold a business, and so suddenly they have this nest egg. And what happens is that when there's a couple of things, but the first thing is when the income stops. So some guy may get a nice chunk of money for his business.
Right.
But suddenly he doesn't have income.
Right.
And their mind changes after about a year. They start getting scared because they start focusing on protecting what they have, which is a completely different mindset than expansion and things like that too. But what I've seen in a situation like that, where if you have, say, a dentist or a chiropractor or a doctor who is like, okay, I've got this money, I want to keep my practice, and I'm just kind of bored. The two things I've seen a lot of people do is, one, they may do some, say, small investments in other businesses, $50,000 here, $100,000 here. And then also just kind of getting into the financial markets in a way that allows them to continue their practice, so obviously not day trading, but also gives them something to kind of look forward to. It's exciting, like when they wake up, okay, I've got these call options on Google, is it working out, and things like that. And that's been a good mix.
What's the learning curve for somebody like that? Let's say that they have some, they got guys like you that are friends that kind of maybe work in that industry and they know a little bit about it, but now they want to get serious. What's the learning curve before they're effective?
So here's the interesting thing with trading is that the thing about trading that's very, let's see, I guess it's if you played a video game where you're flying a plane, you would not in any way, shape, or form expect that you could go hop into a 747 and fly it to Paris, right? Well, what will happen though is that it's so easy to set up a brokerage account. And now all of a sudden you've got your computer, here's your mouse, you're in your bathrobe, click some buttons, and you kind of have a 50-50 shot of making money or not. So it seems pretty easy. But the difference between creating a consistent income from the markets and that is that over the course of 100 trades, did you make money or not? So if you've got the skill set and the mindset over the course of 100 trades, you're gonna have winners and losers, but you're gonna generate income from that. So to learn the basics, this is how the markets work, these are the strategies that I need to know, 3 months. The hardest part though is the mindset part where, as an example, the market rewards bad behavior. So you've got $10,000 at risk, it's not working out, you're supposed to cut your losses, you don't, and the market comes back and you have a winner. It's the worst habit because now what's gonna happen is every time a trade is not working out, I'm just gonna remove my stop. And it only has to, 19 times out of 20 that can work, but it's the 20th time that wipes the person out. That's the flash crash or whatever it is. So it's those mental skills and having the discipline to stick to the plan.
Yeah, so it is a lot of discipline that there has to be a plan. And you find that it can be when you have these sort of rules, and if you stick to the rules, there's going to be a payoff, routinely over time.
So what's interesting is that what people will end up doing, or the mistake that they'll make, is that they're looking for the killing. Because once in a while, especially if you're doing something leveraged like with options, we've done things where you put $10,000 into a trade and you wake up the next day and it's worth $50,000 or $60,000, and you think, wow, I want to do that again. Well, if you're seeking for that, that's the thing. It's like if you're searching for it, it ain't gonna happen. But it's the idea of having a fixed amount of risk in mind. And then just kind of being able to follow your plan like that. But the idea is that when you have we've gone through and we do back testing on different things, and so if you find something that has a 75% probability of success. So let's say you're playing blackjack and you've got a 75% chance of getting a blackjack. For the next 100 hands, what are you gonna do? You are just gonna bet the next 100 hands because you know that at the end of that you're gonna have won some money if 75% of those are gonna be blackjacks. But the interesting thing in trading is that just because there's a 75% probability of success, it doesn't mean you always have 3 winners and a loser. 3 winners and a loser. You could have 10 losing trades in a row. Because over the course of 100 trades, so that's what messes people up. And so the idea is you have to think in terms of, here is a setup that I have, and now I'm going to apply it to like the next 25 trades, and at the end of 25 trades, did I make money or not? Everybody gets so caught up in the current horse race.
And that's probably the tough part, is the kind of, I guess, the peaks and valleys of emotions when, oh, well, I had a great trade today, but I have 3 losers in a row, and they start to get shaky. And then, I almost think of this if I'm sitting at the blackjack table, then, it's getting late, it's been, a long night, now I want to try to make up, you start like really going outside of your structure just because psycho-emotionally, you're not following rules, you're starting to get into emotional habits instead of structural habits. So does the same thing happen with people in the market?
1,000%. So what'll happen is you have a plan, you get kicked in the face 3 times in a row. And and it's so easy for the brain to go into survival mode. And it just overwrites everything. So what happens in that case is, the best example I can think of is, okay, if you're 5 years old and your first encounter with a dog was that it was a friendly Labrador. The rest of your life, the moment you see a dog, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have warm feelings to that dog. Now, if the first time you encountered a dog, it like ripped your arm off, you know, the rest of your life, anytime you see a dog, you are going to be scared to death.
Right.
So how that accounts to trading and investing, or really any kind of financial investments, is that if you have 2 losers in a row, now your mindset is the same as if you've just been attacked by a dog. So you're defensive, you're fearful, you know, you're on guard, and you're going to be more cautious. And when you take that mindset, that overrides your trading plan. It screws you. And the same thing if you have 2 winners in a row. You're enthusiastic, you're euphoric. I'm a trading god, I can do anything. And so you take bigger risks, which it's not following your plan either. And so the idea is that on the next trade, you have to have a beginner's mindset. It's like when you go up to a slot machine and you put a quarter in. You don't really have an expectation that you're going to win or lose. You just want to see what happens.
Right.
And you have to have that same mindset on every trade that you're doing in order to stay consistent.
To a degree, this seems like those swimming with the sharks. I mean, aren't there like real pros that do this full time? And are you at their mercy in swing trading, or basically there's room for everybody in that particular ocean?
So it's a good question, and the reason I like swing trading, where a trade lasts a couple of weeks, is you're actually outside of the realm of the high frequency traders, because they're bing, 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 they're doing the minute-to-minute stuff. So they're you're out of that zone. And the large funds and institutions, it takes them weeks and months to get into positions and weeks and months to get out. The advantage we have is the little guys, and by little guys I mean anybody trading a couple $1 million or less, we can get in and out of something with a click of a button. Hedge funds cannot do that. Like, they do not have that luxury. And because of that, as a smaller investor, we actually can make, compared to what hedge funds do, we can make really outsized returns because we have that liquidity advantage. But the main thing is just the risk. And so if you do something like, say, the reason I like options is that options are leveraged. And if you're buying an option, like say buying a call or buying a put, okay, and if you think something's going to go up, you buy a call. If you think something's going to go down, you buy a put. It's that's a very simplified version of it. But it's a fixed amount of risk. So if you buy $1,000 worth of options, the most you're going to lose is $1,000. Whereas if you go into the currency markets or the futures markets, or you're trading Bitcoin, which I like cryptocurrencies too, but if you wake up and it's getting hammered and you could stand, you don't have a fixed amount of risk. You're going to lose whatever the market takes away from you. So I like the idea of leverage and fixed risk, and so as long as you understand that, you can get in. You're not going to get into a situation where you get in trouble.
So you said the blinky shiny term cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So we've had all kinds of opinions about crypto throughout this series. So I'd love to get your view on it.
Sure. I think it's just another market to trade.
Okay.
So I am a big believer in blockchain and everything that's going to do. But we trade Bitcoin.
Yeah. And
we had, of course, I wish I had bought, I bought some Bitcoins back when it was 200, held it to 16,000. Wish I had bought a lot more. But at the end of the day, it is just an instrument to trade and to invest, and a lot of it's psychological. And what's interesting is if you look at a monthly chart of the NASDAQ, the run up into 2000 and the crash and what's happening now, it's exactly what is happening to Bitcoin. What Bitcoin is doing every couple of days is what the NASDAQ did every couple of months. So based on that, yes, we could see Bitcoin make new highs in July of 2019 if it follows that same pattern. But it is pure psychological. It doesn't matter if technology is going to change the world. Back in the 1920s, RCA was going to change the world. The stock went from 1 to 600, and it crashed because psychologically it just got too high.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in cryptocurrencies. And I'm a fan of Bitcoin, and I believe in it. But I've seen this, I've seen this before.
You've seen these cycles before. So in essence, you're really speaking to crypto from a trading perspective.
For sure.
Not necessarily, a viability, long-term, change the world thing. It's just a matter of another thing to trade, and you like the way that trades.
It's another investment vehicle. Now there's some great things being done. The idea that I love the most is, and I know I have some friends that are buying, say, an apartment complex. They're issuing tokens on it so people can invest in it that way. I think that's a great idea. Stuff like that. And I love the things that are doing. Now, does that mean Bitcoin's going to 500,000? I mean,
who knows?
The same people said, it's kind of like, gold's going to 5,000.
Right.
That's a good hype. Well, we'll see. But if that if any of that makes sense.
It does, yeah, because people are saying buy gold, it's going to go way up. Well, when it hasn't yet.
Yeah, don't mortgage your house and put it all in Bitcoin. It's just another trading vehicle.
But the people who think it's going to 500,000, what have you, they're actually buying it as a very long-term investment, perhaps, as compared to saying you're just trading. you're in, you're out. You've got your parameters and risk around that, and you manage it.
Well, and I think it's like anything else. Like, would you put 100% of your net worth in gold?
Right.
Or 5% or 10? And I think it's this exact same thing with and I'll say Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple or whatever it is that you like. But the idea that, yes, there was this fantastic run-up, and that does happen in asset classes from time to time. But if you missed it, guess what? It doesn't mean that, people get so caught up in that psychological fear of missing the move.
Right.
It's just, it's just like gold. I mean, before Bitcoin, all the scary articles that came out, I always call it the doom and gloom newsletters, which is a great, it's a business model because it creates fear.
Right.
Gold's going to 5,000, gold's going to 10,000, and it talks people into doing things that aren't necessarily the best idea in the world.
That's interesting when we talk about the psychology of this. Is it's one thing to have the ambition and want to earn, but now it's a different phenomenon when you talk about the fear of missing out. So
FOMO.
Is that the FOMO? Okay, yeah. So how does the fear of missing out impact traders, and how do you try to defend against that?
So this is it's an interesting question, and I'm trying to think of how to do this without having a chart. But if you think of like a wave, okay? And whether a market's going up or down, it's doing this in waves, and these waves are essentially emotions, okay? So what is this? So somebody so we're coming up, something's cresting, and as it was turning, people are like, oh, it's still gonna go down, whatever. And then by the time it starts to peak, that's when FOMO sets in, and people are like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna miss this move.
Right.
And what happens is all these people with FOMO get in at the end, and then that's when they actually cause it to roll over, because once it starts to roll over, they have their stop losses, they have all their panic.
Right.
So what's interesting is that FOMO is actually what causes the violent moves in a lot of these markets. And so about the time that you think like, oh my God, I have to get in, it's really the absolute worst time to get in.
Wow, interesting. So when you are training people to do this swing trading as you describe it, so what are some of the parameters, like saying, okay, let's say, I'm going to just make up meaningless numbers, but let's say I've got $1 million saved.
Okay.
I want to now come learn, what you do, and I'm going to take my 3 months to study it and to learn it, which is the basic time frame. How much of my $1 million should I be putting into this, and then what should my expectations be?
All right, so this is a really good question. And the great thing about it is when you're using leverage is that you don't have to put as much at risk as you think.
Okay.
So think of it this way. If you have $1 million, and if you can make 2.3% a week,
right,
that's about 125% a year,
okay,
give or take. Now if you compound it, it's even more, but I'm talking about you actually are taking that money out of your account.
Right.
So I have this model where I think like, and I'll use $100,000 because that's normally, so you have $100,000, if you're making 2.5% a week and wiring that out, so, over the course, what happens is that you end up with $100,000-ish of income.
Right.
And at the end of the year, you still have $100,000 plus in your account.
Right.
It's a nice mix. You're getting income and everything like that. So what do you have to do to make 2.5% a week? So if you're looking at options, and let's say, I'm just going to dial it down to $100,000.
Sure.
To make $2,500 in a week on options, do you have to risk the entire $100,000? And the answer is absolutely no. Generally, you'll do a couple of, without getting into complicated terms, but it's, you can sell options as a spread, which is a fixed amount of risk, high probability trade, risking about $10,000 to make that $2,500. So what gets interesting there is that what happens is that you actually end up having, that capital there, but you're only risking at any given time 10 to 20% of it.
Right.
And then you have the additional capital just sitting there for, just for different scenarios that come up. But the short version is that you don't have to risk nearly as much as you think to double your money.
On an annual basis.
On an annual basis.
So this has a little bit of a ring of too good to be true. So
sure.
Now I've got, I put 100,000 in. I'm risking on a weekly basis 10,000. Return on that could be around 2,500 in the systems you're describing. Why isn't everybody doing this? Or is a part of this the fact that everybody isn't doing it? Or what makes this work?
So it's interesting. So what happens is that most people get into options. They learn the absolute wrong thing to do. So I'm going to use Amazon as an example. So
Okay.
trading. So Amazon, obviously, it's a company. You can buy the stock, and then you can buy and sell options against the stock. So let's say Amazon. Well, Amazon right now is about $1,700.
Right.
So when someone learns about options, they say, "Oh, I think Amazon's going to go higher. It's trading at $1,700 right now. I'm going to buy a $1,730 call option
Right.
for $5."
Right.
All right. What they don't know is that has a 90% chance of never working. Like never.
Okay.
So they're throwing away money.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is that people will learn about options, they get excited, and they just do it the absolute wrong way. The right way to do it is that you learn a couple of strategies and say, okay, instead of betting that Amazon's going to go up, you can also just make a bet that it's not going to go, say, below a certain level. So you can say, okay, I'm going to sell a $1,690 put. All right, so, and again, I know for people that don't trade options, try to make this as non-confusing as possible.
Right.
So say that you used your miles to buy a first-class plane ticket
Right.
from Los Angeles to Singapore.
Right.
You sit down in your seat, and a guy from Coach comes up and says, "Hey, I'll give you $10,000 for your seat." And you're thinking, "Man, I used miles for this, right?
Right.
But I really enjoy the seat." And he said, "You know what? Give me a couple of hours, and why don't you come back?" He's like, "Okay." So now it's a 17-hour flight. Now you've been flying for 10 hours, and you got 7 hours left. And the guy comes back and says, this guy's haggard. He's like, been sitting in this crappy seat. And said, "Okay, are you ready? Or are you ready to switch seats?" He's like, "Yeah, here's your $3,000. And you're like, "Wait, I thought we said $10,000 for the seat." And he's like, "Yeah, that's when you had 17 hours.
Right.
But now we've only got 7 hours left. It's not worth as much."
Right.
And so it's the same thing with options. And what happens is that the closer you get to expiration, so the big part of options is that it's a premium. So
Right.
you're placing a bet that something's going to go higher in a limited amount of time.
Right.
And so when you buy an option that's out of the money, it's the same thing like that flight to Singapore. If that stock doesn't make an incredible move before it lands in Singapore, before the plane lands in Singapore, that seat's going to be worthless.
Right.
Because by the time you land, you cannot sell your seat, right?
Right.
So so anyway, that analogy is just how options work. The other side of that coin, though, is that instead of buying that option that's going to expire worthless and not have any value, is you can sell it to somebody else. So you can be the guy that says, "Well, you know what? I'm not going to buy that option because the chances are very high that it's going to be zero by the time we get to expiration, but I can sell it to some poor sucker who thinks it's going to go higher,
Right.
and the money that he loses actually goes into my account."
So now, so take me through maybe an actual use case of a trade, something, either like this with Amazon or something like that, where here's how much we bought in the way of an option, here's how long we held it, here's how it traded after. So just so we can kind of now get we got the analogy of the first class seat. Now let's get a real life one.
Okay, so Len, we'll go back to saying Amazon. So let's say we have, and again, going back and saying, okay, I found a signal here. There's a 75% chance that this stock is going to move higher over the next 3 weeks. So a couple different option strategies you could do. You could buy that out of the money call, which again is the worst strategy ever. And in that case, the stock could go up and you could still lose money. And it's important to understand that. The only way in that case, if Amazon is here and you're making a bet that's going to go here, is that it has to explode through that level for you to make money. All right, so what's a better way to make money on that? Instead of trying to buy a call, which is a bet that it's going to go up, you could also, there's put options that are bets that it's going to go down. So, and again, trying to keep this as simple as possible. If the stock's going to go up, then those put options are the first class seats that are going to expire worthless.
Right.
So what you do instead of trying to buy a call is say, okay, Amazon's at $1,700. I think it's going to go higher. The $1,700 put is selling for $10. So I'm going to sell that. Now, if you sell that, that's called selling naked options, which you don't want to do. So as a spread, you just cap it. So I'll sell the $1,700 put. I'll buy the $1,690 as protection. We're going back to that $100,000 account analogy. I'll sell that for, say, $2.50. That's $2,500. Amazon trades sideways, goes a little higher. Those puts expire worthless, and I keep all that money. And if for some reason it implodes, my risk is fixed.
So I guess in trying to juxtapose the first scenario you said is the wrong way to do this versus what the way that you describe it, is that the continual way that you recommend doing these swing trades with options, or are there other aspects to it?
So the easiest thing to do is, and it does take, if somebody has never traded options before, that's part of it. It does take a couple of weeks to understand all this. Because I know if someone's listening to this now going like, you're selling? What? I totally get that.
When you sell it, you have to buy it back at some point in time.
Yeah. So you sell it for $5, you buy it back for 10 cents.
Right.
You keep the $4.90.
Right.
But the long story short is that to make consistent money in options, if you think something's going to go higher, sell a put credit spread. If you think something's going to go lower, sell a call credit spread. Done.
That's
all you
just
gotta
boils down to that. And I know a lot of this is probably counterintuitive to people at first and aren't familiar with it.
It absolutely is counterintuitive.
So so you're again, just to reiterate, you think that it's probably 3 months before you kind of bake it into your brain. So when you do your training, and I know that you have a book also. Tell me the title of your book.
It's called Mastering the Trade. So it was out in 2005 by McGraw-Hill, and it has since gone through a couple of updates.
And was there a market for the book? I mean, McGraw-Hill's a big publisher, so it's they probably said, wow, there's a lot of people who are thirsty for this knowledge.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, and it kind of addressed a niche of, there's a lot of good trading books out there that are very general. This is an uptrend, this is a downtrend. And there's a lot of good books on options trading. This is what an iron condor is, and this is what a call is. But there was never a book that said, hey, when a stock looks like this, this is the correct option strategy to apply. And so that's kind of what we did, or what I did with Mastering the Trade, and trying to boil it down in such a way that people can understand it.
Now, we've had some conversations with people who literally, when they're trading in the market, they're doing fundamental analysis, trying to look at the reviewing quarterly reports and getting a sense of things, and then basically placing their bets on how they see things as far as doing the fundamentals. Are you doing almost exclusively technical analysis on these stocks, or how do you approach it? Yeah,
so a great easy resource for people is Investors Business Daily. So Investors Business Daily, every week what they do is they update what's called the IBD 50. And what this is out of the universe of 14,000 stocks, here's the 50 that have both the best fundamentals and the best technicals. It saves a ton of time. I don't personally do any research like that myself because they do such a good job. And then what I can do is take that list of 50 stocks and then apply my technical indicators and then option strategies to those. And it's a very easy way to do it, because that way that the company you're getting into has been vetted. It's like, oh, what does this company make, and do I need to read these reports? These guys have already done all that. There's very strict criteria to kind of get it in there, and it makes it really easy.
So it does, using those kinds of resources, skinny it down, because it's fast. For somebody, especially if you are that bored professional, it's like, who's got time to go and do all this research? But and you find that that's a trusted resource that they're analysts. Now, you said you had an earlier career in analysis, right?
Yeah, so what we would do is it was more on the retail front. So it's just kind of like looking at inventory levels and things at stores like Target and Home Depot, and it was great because it got to kind of let me see behind the scenes of some of these companies. But while I was doing that, something that I learned is I started learning about hedge funds, where they would look at the data and they would start shorting the stock. And what would happen in that case, so if a hedge fund is making an attack and shorting a stock, they essentially think that the stock is overvalued and is going to go down. But a fascinating trade that we found is that there are oftentimes when a hedge fund will do that, and they're wrong. So we also look for stocks that have high short interest over 20%, which means that if there's 1 million shares on float, 200,000 of them are being held short. Well, at some point those have to be covered. So we look for stocks with the 20% that are 20% short that are within 10% of new 52-week highs. So what this does is it creates a short squeeze. This is why a couple of weeks ago Tesla went from 300 to 370 in a course of a week, because all the shorts got crushed. Those are situations where we get very aggressive, and they're fantastic when they set up.
So to demystify for people that don't they hear a term like hedge fund. So what's a hedge fund?
So a hedge fund is, there's all kinds of different hedge funds. It's kind of a misnomer because you think, oh, this is a fund that's going to, hedge all their bets. And it's not. They're just aggressive traders with a lot of money. Right. But generally what they're doing is making much bigger bets that could last longer. Mm-hmm. So where I'm talking about, hey, I'm going to sell these puts on Amazon and try to make my 2.5% that week, they are, they're looking for situations where because it takes them weeks and months to get in and weeks and months to get out for a lot of these things. Think of it as, instead of yourself sitting behind a computer trading your account, it's a team of 1,000 people looking at tons of different angles, and they've got computer algorithms feeding them all the stuff. Right. We can never compete with that. Right. And so you don't want to compete with that.
But they're basically the Titanic and you're a speedboat.
Absolutely. So they're essentially they're the Titanic coming by, and we're on the surfboards trying to catch the waves. Yeah. That creates.
Interesting. And the difference also is they've got a raised fund of that where people invest in them, mm-hmm. as compared to most of the people doing what you do are trading their own money, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's different when you're trading other people's money. There is you have to be more careful. Mm-hmm. Anybody that says, "Oh, I'm fine with risk," they're lying. Mm-hmm. As soon as they see a down month, they're going to freak out. Right. So as a trader, I actually prefer, and we've done both, where it's like, "Hey, let's try some managed accounts and let's do this." And when you're trading your own funds, it goes back to that freedom. Yeah. I do it for the freedom, and so it's tougher when it's if you got a bunch of people going like, "Oh my gosh, this was down 4% this month." It's like, yeah, well, it was up 27%. Whatever. It's just kind of you're dealing with stuff that's like, this isn't the freedom part. And so I'm a big advocate of just trading your own funds. Yeah. So
I think you started with some of the considerations there. So again, I've got $100,000 saved, or I got $500,000 saved, or whatever it might be. And now I have an option. I could either try to learn to trade this on my own, or I can hand it to a hedge fund or something like that and say, okay, let them go trade it. Now in their case, they've got fees and management fees and other things built in. So what are the considerations, one versus the other?
It's a really good question, and it's tough because my opinion on that is that with hedge funds and things like that, especially if it does not have a long track record. Mm-hmm. So if you're at a cocktail party and some guy said, "Hey, I'm launching this fund," do not give them a dime. Okay. Is my general rule of thumb. It just seems like every story I hear like that, it just never works out. So for whatever the reason. Now, if something that has a more, a longer track record and things like that, but the thing I found that generally works the most for those kind of investments are more real estate based. Mm-hmm. So it's just more predictable. Right. So that's just, and again, it's just, I'm thinking of someone that's like, hey, I'm a dentist, I've got $500,000, am I going to put it in a hedge fund? I would say take $100,000 and trade it yourself, and maybe put $400,000, into some type of real estate investment. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more conservative, more predictable. Hedge funds just, there's just a lot of strange things that can happen in hedge funds, and you get feed to death too. Yeah,
and since you seem to have a disposition to manage risk, and I know maybe this isn't your area, but in your opinion, what type of real estate do you think is good investments for somebody that is that professional that's got some extra cash?
Sure, and I like doing real estate, and we'll just whether it's hey, let's buy a couple of houses and rent them out. Let's do we've bought like a country property. We'll put on Airbnb when we're not there, or put in different investments. But things like the most consistent things I found are you find professionals that can go in and buy like say a dilapidated apartment building, and they're going to fix it up and all that kind of stuff. Investing into something like that. Mm-hmm. Very, very predictable revenue. Yeah. And that's something that I've seen over and over and over again where, people will be sitting there making 20 or 25% a year going, why else would I want to do anything else? Mm-hmm. And I agree with them. I mean, it's like, it's a very, it's not something that we do, it's just something that I've observed and noticed.
Yeah, and it will never go to zero.
Yeah, you've still got the dirt there too.
It's all there. So, and I guess, so the idea being that it's predictable in the sense that if you took, in one of the examples you have a dilapidated apartment building and rehab it, now you got rental income once it rents. So even if the market happens to go down, you still got cash flow coming out of it. So is that why you like that?
Well, and it's amazing what people will do. Is at the end of the day, if you've got a lot of bills, you're going to pay your rent. Right. You need to have a roof over your head. There's a great book out. It's got the most boring title in the world, but it's called The Secret Life of Banking and Real Estate. It talks about these real estate cycles that have been happening for the last 300 years. Mm-hmm. He called the real estate top in 2008. Mm-hmm. He's looking for the next one for 2026. But what's fascinating about it is that it talks about these natural economic cycles that happen that actually influence politics, that influence banking laws, and these cycles happen over and over and over again.
Right.
And when you read the book, you actually start getting everything. It's just like, oh, okay, so this is the time to buy real estate. This is the time to unload it, unless you just want to keep it. And it takes a lot of mystery out of all of those cycles.
And it goes back 300 years. So, that's all kinds of industrial revolution, technology, et cetera. But that's still a consistent pattern that he observes.
Well, and it's interesting too, and you go back 100 years, the same, at the same point in the cycle, the political system changed to like exactly what's happening either today or 20 years ago.
Right.
And it's actually embarrassing because we're all doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if you realize that, it's just like, oh, it's just easier to kind of get into that flow of things.
So with your own money and investments, so you obviously trade. Sounds like you do some real estate. Anything else that you go into?
I am actually a huge fan of entrepreneurship. And so I've got, a couple of different businesses that I've started and I've also invested in. My favorite type of investment is not, there's a lot of great investments around Austin, Texas, where it's like, oh, here's an established firm and, we're raising money, and that's always great. But I always like finding somebody somebody that works at a corporation, they're stuck, they don't really like it, but they're good. And they have an idea for a business and they just don't have the capital. And I love that kind of a situation because you're essentially funding someone's dream.
Right.
And in that case, of course, you're early stage, you're getting a large chunk of the equity. And it's not something that's mostly never going to go public or probably be bought out, but it becomes an income source.
Right.
It becomes part of, and things like that can be tricky and there's always misfires, but I enjoy doing things like that. And so, I'll say like a fifth of my money is I'm trading, another fifth is in, tangible assets like gold and land, another fifth is into business investments. And then, other income I always think it's important to use for things like experiences. We homeschool our kids right now, so we try to travel with them and do things like that. And that's important too.
What was the thing that got you to want to homeschool your kids? Like, how do you see the education system right now?
It's interesting. I went to public school, and it was, so there's pros and cons, obviously, of public school. And I'm not sure why, at some point, I was like, I can't send my kids to public school. And it wasn't some kind of an elitist thing like, oh my God, my kids have to do something like this. It was just more like, what kind of human beings do I want them to develop into? What kind of skills do I want them to have?
Right.
And so they started off at a Montessori school that went through, say, grade 5, and it was great. And we couldn't find a great option after that. We tried a private school, didn't like it. And so it just became, after running into a couple of people that had tried it, it's like, let's just try homeschooling them. And it was frankly the scariest decision. It's like, okay, are we totally screwing up our kids here? So we've been doing it the last 2 years. Our kids are 12, 10, and 8. It's been great. And at some point, I know our oldest is already talking like, hey, I'd like to go back to school again. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Our daughter probably will never go back to school. She's, she loves it. But what's great is that they spend time doing things that's interesting to them and focusing on their own interests versus the rubber stamped, you must do this and become a good factory worker kind of a thing. And so it's been scary and it's been a lot of work, but so far it's been amazing.
Yeah, I've got similar experience. It's funny you say, out of our 3 kids, the girl, the younger middle girl and younger boy, started homeschooling, travel a lot. Almost identical.
Interesting.
My son went back. Decided he wanted to, after a year and a half, wanted to go back. My daughter will never go back to school.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, and what I find, because a part of their homeschool curriculum is teaching them about money and finance.
Absolutely.
Because I look back and I was looking at what their schooling is, and this is one of the most important categories of life. Yet there's almost no education on it whatsoever. I mean, getting a bank account, balancing your bank account, reconciling every month, it's nothing about that.
So it's interesting you say that because I totally agree. And what happens, so if you've heard of Fortnite, the video game?
Yes.
Okay. And I started playing with my kids because they're so into it. So what's been interesting with that is that they're very hungry for V-Bucks. And we're very, very opposed. Like, we will never give them money to buy V-Bucks so they can buy dances and skins. But they can earn it.
Right.
And what's great is that when we explain this to them, then all of a sudden they're running around and look, you're not going to get $20 for making your damn bed.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
right? That's your, that's your job.
They want unrealistic.
Yeah.
wages. Yeah.
Right. So, but things like, if you're going to walk the dogs and, or different, or, hey, I need my car cleaned, and just different things like that. Or I'll take them to the office sometimes and have them sort through some files. And I've actually had him do a couple of trades too, which backfired because my youngest son, he's 8. He made like $1,000 doing a trade. Now he's like, I'm not doing any chores. I'm just going to do another trade. I'm like, we need to talk about that. There's a cool new company I think it's called Greenlight, where they issue these debit cards. And so, we got these, they're in our kid's name. And then when you get on your iPhone, you just, okay, $40, $40, $40, and it loads the debit cards up. And that's, they can manage their money that way too. And, but I found that's really good, because what happens is that when they aren't given money, then that creates a drive to figure out how to get it.
Right.
If you're given everything, then they're just going to be millennials. So, no offense I employ a lot of millennials, and they're great.
But you're not wrong about that either. So I get it. We've had some conversations, some of these interviews around that too. So it's very, very interesting, because I think there's obviously a consideration for the parent who's responsible, saying, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to create and preserve and grow wealth. And at the other side, I've also got to figure out, how do I get my kids to understand these dynamics so that they don't have to start this late in life trying to figure it out. So yeah, I think, and if you're playing Fortnite with your kids, you get the Super Dad Award. So.
It is fun, but yeah, you gotta, it's all about balance.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Well, part of it is, I think of too, is just the idea of, look, yeah, I hope that I live a long life and I'm able to, be around and give my kids advice. But if I get hit by a Mack truck tomorrow, I want to make sure that am I doing my job and giving them, look, your job as a parent is to send those kids out. It's like you got an arrow. And they need to go out and figure and have the skills to figure it out.
That's right.
And so just being very conscious of that.
Yeah, that's terrific. So any additional advice or considerations for people who have the desires, as I said, to create more streams of income, to be able to grow their wealth beyond just their day-to-day job, et cetera, that you would have for us?
Sure. So there's a couple things to consider. And like I said, I'm obviously a big fan of trading and a big fan of kind of investing in businesses. It really is just getting clarity on what you want your day to look like. And so the nice thing about trading is that there's a lot of freedom from that. You don't have to do it all the time. Sometimes it can be frustrating, if you have 3 or 4 losers in a row, and you have to deal with that. So I think it's nice to have alternate income streams. The main issue, if you invest, like say in a business, is suddenly that can become a headache. And I certainly have had situations where it's like, oh my God, I got to talk to this guy again. So you just want to kind of be careful, just be clear on how you want to spend your days. And if you want passive investments where you're not going to hear anything, great. You're going to invest maybe in some real estate, or throw $50,000 into a movie and see what happens, or something like that. Right. But it's just being very clear that, do you want to be involved or do you not want to be involved?
Right.
And it's completely fine either way. Just be clear about it.
Yeah, and sometimes I think people get deluded on passive income, thinking something is passive when it really isn't. Like, in real estate, for example, if you're the landlord, you're getting some phone calls, when the boiler breaks and the air conditioning breaks or what have you, yeah.
I've heard that if you have 10 rental properties, you're not a landlord, you're a land slave.
Very well stated, for sure. So, John, if you were mid-20s, 25, 28 years old, or you had one of those people sitting across from you.
Sure.
And they're saying, you've got wisdom now. Help guide me. How should I move into my future? What kind of planning should I do? What advice would you give him?
Sure, and this is what I would tell my son if he was sitting in front of me. He's age 25, and it's like, God, what do I do? And it's one of those things where, and I'm totally anti, get a good job and all that kind of stuff. It's more about, first of all, and then there's the other extreme of that is follow your bliss is a great way to make 30 grand a year, right, kind of a thing. And it's that fine line, right? Yeah. So I love the gig economy. So if you're truly someone who's like, I've tried working in a corporation, I hate it. Whatever you like to do, get on Upwork. That's where if you're a graphic designer, instead of working and making $60,000 a year at a corporation, you can make $100,000 a year, doing it freelance.
Right.
So I'm a huge fan of that. But I'm also a huge fan of, if you're not really sure, just try something and throw your heart into it. So find some interesting job at a small business, learn all you can, because what's going to happen is you're going to see how a small business works.
Right.
And if you truly want to do something, you know, whatever it is, you want to, like, gosh, I really just want to do something on my own, it really actually helps to understand how a business works. And you can sit there and watch how, man, this person who's managing this person is really an idiot, you know, or this person over here is doing a really good job, and look at how everything moves together. And you can learn so much there. But I always just kind of look at it as just, you know, write down 3 things that are interesting, whether it's, you know, being on a fishing boat for a year, you know, going in and doing, you know, working with people in Africa, or just throwing yourself into a company in the U.S. Just throw yourself into it, and don't sit there and kind of, you know, laminate about the absurdity of the universe.
Right.
You know, go in there, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and learn what you do well and what you don't do well, and then find more of what you can do well.
You know, what's interesting is that a lot of people, maybe when they approach that, they'll typically say, "Oh, I'm going to try this." But I think that the important key is what you said, is put yourself into it. Learn what it is, just to put everything in it. Maybe over time you're going to find out you don't love it, but at least give it everything you got for the time that you have.
No, do the Yoda approach. You know, there is no try.
There is no try, exactly.
Yeah, just put your, you know, it's, and what's really interesting too, and I've, you know, I think I remember one of my favorite jobs in high school is I worked at the herpetology department of a museum for a year. And at first it's kind of like, oh, you're handling snakes and reptiles and it's weird. But by the end of it, I loved it. And it was just more like the camaraderie, and you're doing this weird stuff, and no 2 days were alike. And so you actually really never know, you know, what you're going to find that you like, unless you know, just, you know, rip your guts out and just dive in, and not try to, like, you know, look good or anything like that. Just try it. And I always say too, if you've got 5 things that you're thinking about, pick the one that scares the shit out of you. I mean, that's the one that you actually want to do the most, and that's the one where you're going to learn the most as well.
John, a lot of great wisdom in there. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come sit with us and share it.
Yeah, this was great. It's great that you guys are doing this.
We did it. We have completed episode 9 of our 9-part docuseries, Money Revealed. What an honor it has been to take this journey with you. And I want to remind you that while we have the series live, you can get the deep discount on owning it. The first investment you should make is an investment in this series, which contains all the wisdom, an assembly of so many experts in so many different realms. It's never been put together before. There's nowhere else to go get this information like this. So it's been an extraordinary pleasure to be with you on this journey. I think the journey should continue with you through the investment of owning this thing called Money Revealed. The assembled wisdom here is something that can absolutely transform you and your financial future, and that is my wish for you. So thanks for being here with me.